Criticism can feel like a tidal wave, overwhelming and relentless, leaving you questioning your worth and abilities. Maybe it's a harsh comment from a coworker, an unfair judgment from a friend, or even the echo of your own self-doubt. It's in these moments that we often feel powerless, as if the opinions of others hold the keys to our confidence. But what if there was a way to not just endure criticism, but to rise above it with unshakable resilience? This is where Stoicism, an ancient philosophy practiced by emperors and thinkers alike, offers timeless wisdom. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's greatest Stoic leaders, once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. In this video, we'll explore 18 practical Stoic techniques that can help you build a fortress of calm and clarity in the face of criticism. These aren't abstract theories, they're actionable tools designed to empower you, to shift your perspective, and to transform how you respond to judgment. Whether you're dealing with external criticism or the inner critic in your own mind, these principles will guide you toward a more grounded, resilient way of living. So let's dive in and discover how Stoic wisdom can help you turn criticism into an opportunity for growth. Imagine this: you've just spent weeks pouring your energy into a project at work, only to receive a harsh critique from your boss or a colleague. It stings, doesn't it? That feeling of frustration, maybe even self-doubt, can be overwhelming. But what if I told you that the key to overcoming this lies in a simple yet profound idea from Stoicism, the dichotomy of control? This concept, taught by the ancient philosopher Epictetus, is about understanding what's truly within your power and what isn't. Epictetus observed that many of our struggles come from trying to control things that are simply beyond us, like other people's opinions, their actions, or even external events. On the flip side, we often overlook what we can control: our own thoughts, reactions, and choices. Let's bring this back to that negative review at work. You can't control what your boss or coworker thinks or says about your work, but you can control how you respond to it. Do you let their words define your self-worth, or do you take a step back, assess the feedback objectively, and decide what, if anything, you can learn from it? Think about it this way: criticism is like the weather. You can't stop the rain from falling, but you can choose whether to carry an umbrella or let it soak you. When you shift your focus to what's within your control, your mindset, your effort, your growth, you build resilience. You stop giving away your power to things you can't change. So here's a question to reflect on. What criticism have you taken personally that was actually outside your control? Maybe it was a comment from a friend, a judgment from a stranger, or even your own inner critic. Recognizing this distinction is the first step toward freeing yourself from the weight of others' opinions. It's not about dismissing feedback altogether. It's about choosing what deserves your energy and what doesn't. That's where true resilience begins. Criticism often feels personal, like a direct hit to our sense of self-worth. But what if you could step back and see it as something separate from who you are? This is where the Stoic principle of cognitive detachment comes into play. Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." In other words, the sting of criticism isn't always in the words themselves, but in how we choose to interpret them. By practicing cognitive detachment, you can create a mental space between yourself and the judgment of others, preserving your inner peace. Think of it this way: when someone criticizes you, their words are like a pebble thrown into a pond. The ripples may spread, but the pond itself remains unchanged. The same applies to you. You don't have to let those ripples disrupt your calm. Instead, view criticism as an external event, something happening to you, not about you. This shift in perspective transforms criticism from a personal attack into mere information, something you can evaluate objectively. Here's a practical tip to put this into action. The next time you face criticism, pause and ask yourself, is this criticism true or is it just noise? This simple question helps you filter out what's worth considering from what's simply irrelevant. It's not about ignoring feedback or dismissing it outright. It's about detaching emotionally so you can respond with clarity rather than react with defensiveness. This approach not only builds resilience but also empowers you to grow without being weighed down by the opinions of others. Criticism, especially when it feels harsh or unfair, can sting. But what if we could reframe it as something entirely different, not as an attack but as a mirror? A mirror that reflects not just our flaws but also the areas where we have the potential to grow. This is the Stoic approach to criticism, seeing it not as a judgment but as an opportunity. Marcus Aurelius, one of Stoicism's most famous practitioners, once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." In other words, when someone criticizes you, don't respond with defensiveness or anger. Instead, respond by becoming better by using their words as a tool for self-reflection and growth. So, how do we do this? Start by asking yourself a simple but powerful question. What can I learn from this feedback, even if it's harsh? This shift in mindset transforms criticism from something painful into something valuable. For example, imagine you receive feedback at work that your presentations lack clarity. At first, it might feel discouraging, but instead of dismissing it, you take a step back and reflect. Maybe there's truth in the critique. Maybe you've been rushing through your points or not organizing your thoughts effectively. By acknowledging this, you can turn that criticism into actionable steps like practicing your delivery or seeking out resources to improve your communication skills. This is the power of self-reflection. It allows us to see criticism not as a verdict on our worth, but as a roadmap for becoming better versions of ourselves. And when we approach it this way, we not only grow personally, we also disarm the critic. After all, when you respond to harsh words with calm self-improvement, you take away their power to hurt you. You become, as Marcus Aurelius suggested, unlike the person who delivered the criticism, not by seeking revenge, but by rising above it. Picture this: someone criticizes you, and your first instinct is to fire back with a sharp response. It's natural, it's human, but what if I told you that one of the most powerful tools you have against criticism isn't your words, but your silence? This is where Stoicism offers a profound lesson. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, taught that not every critic deserves your energy or attention. He said, "If anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said, but answer, 'He was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone.'" In other words, sometimes the best response is no response at all. Silence isn't weakness, it's a deliberate choice. It's about recognizing that engaging with every critic can drain your energy and distract you from what truly matters. Think about it. How often have you regretted responding to criticism in the heat of the moment? Maybe you said something you didn't mean, or maybe the argument escalated into something far bigger than it needed to be. Silence in these moments can act as a shield, protecting your peace and allowing you to rise above the noise. But here's the key: this isn't about ignoring criticism entirely. It's about discerning when to engage and when to let go. Unwarranted criticism, the kind that's meant to provoke or belittle, rarely deserves your time. By choosing silence, you reclaim your power. You show that you're not easily shaken, that your sense of self-worth isn't tied to someone else's opinion. And often, that's the most frustrating response for a critic because it denies them the reaction they were seeking. So, the next time you're faced with criticism, pause. Ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Is this person speaking from a place of genuine concern, or are they simply trying to provoke a reaction? Sometimes, the most stoic thing you can do is to let your silence speak louder than your words ever could. It's not about avoiding conflict, it's about mastering your response and choosing peace over unnecessary strife. Here's the next part of the video script based on your outline segment. One of the most transformative virtues Stoicism teaches is humility, a powerful shield against the sting of criticism. When we let ego take the reins, criticism can feel like a personal attack, leaving us defensive or resentful. But humility, as the Stoics remind us, is the antidote to this toxic cycle. Seneca once warned, "Pride is the greatest burden of all. It weighs heavy on the soul, distorting our perception of ourselves and the world around us." When we carry the weight of pride, even the smallest critique can feel like a crushing blow. But humility lightens that load, allowing us to see criticism not as a threat, but as an opportunity to grow. At its core, humility is about embracing our imperfections. It's recognizing that we're all works in progress, and that's perfectly okay. Criticism, then, becomes less about exposing our flaws and more about highlighting areas where we can improve. It's not a verdict on our worth, but a roadmap for self-betterment. Think about it. When you approach criticism with humility, you take away its power to wound. Instead of reacting defensively, you can respond with curiosity and openness, asking yourself, "What can I learn from this?" Here's a practical exercise to help you cultivate this mindset. Take a moment to reflect on one flaw you're willing to acknowledge and improve. Write it down. This simple act of self-awareness is a step toward embracing humility. It's not about dwelling on your shortcomings, but about committing to growth. When you accept your imperfections, criticism loses its sharp edge. It becomes less about proving yourself and more about becoming better, a shift that can transform how you navigate both praise and critique in your life. This passage maintains a conversational, empathetic tone while offering actionable insights, ensuring it's accessible and engaging for a broad audience. Criticism can feel overwhelming in the moment, but Stoicism teaches us to step back and see it through the lens of perspective. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most renowned Stoic thinkers, often reminded himself that most criticism is temporary, a passing storm rather than a permanent state. He encouraged himself to ask, "Will this matter in a week, a month, a year?" By zooming out and considering the bigger picture, we can often see that what feels crushing today might be trivial tomorrow. Think about it this way: when someone criticizes you, their words are like ripples on the surface of a lake. They might disturb the water for a moment, but over time, the ripples fade and the lake returns to its calm, undisturbed state. The same is true for criticism. Most of it doesn't stick around long enough to define you or your journey. So, the next time you're faced with harsh words, pause and ask yourself, "How will I feel about this a week from now?" A month from now, chances are it won't carry the same weight. This practice isn't about dismissing criticism entirely, it's about giving it the right amount of importance. Some criticism can be valuable, helping us grow and improve, but much of it is rooted in the critic's own biases, insecurities, or fleeting emotions. By stepping back and viewing it through a wider lens, you can separate what's worth holding onto from what's better left to drift away. Imagine standing on a mountaintop looking down at the world below. From such a height, the small details blur, and what remains are the things that truly matter. This is the power of perspective. It helps us focus on what's enduring: our values, our goals, our growth, rather than getting caught up in the noise of momentary judgments. Criticism, when seen from this vantage point, loses its sting and becomes just one small part of a much larger, more meaningful life. So, the next time criticism comes your way, take a deep breath and remind yourself of Marcus Aurelius' wisdom. Ask yourself, will this matter in the grand scheme of my life? More often than not, the answer will help you move forward with clarity and resilience, knowing that you're the one who gets to decide what truly holds weight in your story. Criticism often feels like a personal attack, but what if we pause to consider where it's coming from? This is where understanding intent becomes a game changer. As Epictetus once said, "If anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said, but answer, 'He was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone.'" In other words, don't assume malice right away. Most of the time, criticism isn't about you, it's about the other person's perspective, their concerns, or even their own insecurities. So how do we navigate this? Start by asking yourself a simple but powerful question. What was the critic's true intention? Are they trying to help you improve, or are they lashing out because of their own frustrations? This distinction is crucial. Constructive criticism often comes from a place of care or a desire to see growth, even if it's not delivered perfectly. Destructive criticism, on the other hand, is usually rooted in negativity or a lack of understanding. When you can separate the two, you gain the clarity to respond with wisdom rather than emotion. Let's bring this to life with an example. Imagine you're at work and a colleague points out a mistake in your project. Your first instinct might be to feel defensive or embarrassed. But what if they're trying to ensure the team succeeds, not tear you down? By focusing on their intent, you can shift your mindset from "Why are they attacking me?" to "How can I use this feedback to do better?" This small shift can transform criticism from something painful into an opportunity for growth. Of course, not all criticism is well-meaning, and that's okay. Even when the intent isn't constructive, understanding it can still empower you. If someone's words are rooted in negativity, recognizing that can help you let go of their opinion instead of carrying it with you. After all, their criticism says more about them than it does about you. So the next time you're faced with criticism, pause, take a breath, ask yourself what the other person's intention might be. Whether it's constructive or destructive, understanding intent gives you the power to choose how you respond, and that's where true resilience begins. Criticism, as uncomfortable as it can feel, often carries with it a hidden gift, one that can help us grow in ways we might not have seen on our own. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, once said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." This idea reminds us that adversity, including criticism, isn't just something to endure. It's an opportunity to uncover blind spots and refine our character. When someone points out a flaw or offers feedback, they're giving us a chance to see ourselves more clearly. And that's a gift, even if it doesn't feel like one in the moment. So, how do we reframe criticism into something we can genuinely appreciate? One powerful way is through the practice of gratitude. Instead of reacting defensively, try thanking the critic internally, if not out loud. This doesn't mean you have to agree with everything they say, but by acknowledging the value in their perspective, you shift your mindset. You move from resistance to curiosity, from frustration to growth. Gratitude helps you detach from the sting of the critique and focus on what you can learn from it. Here's a practical exercise to put this into action. At the end of the day, take a moment to reflect on any criticism you received. Then write down one thing you're grateful for about that feedback. Maybe it revealed a habit you hadn't noticed, or perhaps it pushed you to improve a skill you've been neglecting. By actively finding something to appreciate, you train your mind to see criticism not as an attack, but as a tool for self-improvement. This small act of gratitude can transform how you approach feedback, turning it into a source of strength rather than stress. It's often said that the most powerful armor we can wear is the armor of self-awareness. When we truly know ourselves, our strengths, our weaknesses, and most importantly, our values, criticism loses much of its sting. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most renowned Stoic thinkers, spent a lifetime practicing self-examination, urging himself to look inward and understand his own nature. He knew that when we are deeply rooted in our principles, the opinions of others can't easily uproot us. Think of it this way. If you're standing on solid ground, someone shaking the earth beneath you won't knock you over. But if you're unsure of where you stand, even the slightest tremor can throw you off balance. That's why self-awareness is so crucial. It's your shield against baseless criticism. So how do you build this shield? Start by asking yourself a simple but profound question. What core values do you hold that no criticism can shake? These are the principles that define you, the beliefs you'd stand by even if the whole world disagreed. Maybe it's integrity, kindness, or a commitment to growth. Whatever they are, identifying them gives you a foundation of confidence. When someone criticizes you, you can ask yourself, does this align with my values? Or is it just noise? If it's noise, let it pass. If it's valid, use it as an opportunity to grow. But either way, you're in control. You're not tossed around by every opinion because you know who you are and what you stand for. That's the power of self-awareness. It doesn't just protect you, it empowers you to navigate criticism with clarity and calm. Imagine someone says something critical, and your first instinct is to fire back, maybe with anger, maybe with defensiveness. It's a natural reaction, but Stoicism offers a powerful alternative, the discipline of non-reaction. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, put it this way: you become a slave to whoever controls what angers you. Think about that for a moment. When we react immediately to criticism, we're handing over control of our emotions and ultimately our peace of mind to someone else. But what if, instead of reacting, we paused? What if we took a moment to step back and choose how we respond? This is where the Stoic practice of non-reaction comes in. It's not about ignoring criticism or pretending it doesn't affect us. It's about creating space between the criticism and our response, space to think, to reflect, and to act with intention rather than emotion. By delaying our reaction, even for a few seconds, we give ourselves the chance to respond rationally rather than impulsively. This small pause can make all the difference between escalating a situation and resolving it calmly. Here's a simple but effective exercise to practice this discipline. The next time you're faced with criticism, count to 10 before replying. That brief moment gives your mind a chance to process what's been said, to detach from the initial emotional spike, and to consider a more thoughtful response. It's not about suppressing your feelings, it's about choosing how you express them. Over time, this practice can help you build resilience, maintain your composure, and avoid being controlled by the words or actions of others. This approach isn't just about handling criticism better, it's about reclaiming your power. When you pause before reacting, you're no longer a slave to your emotions. Instead, you're the one steering the conversation and, more importantly, your own inner state. And that's a skill worth cultivating. Imagine this: you pour your heart into a project, share it with the world, and instead of praise, you're met with silence, or worse, criticism. It stings, doesn't it? But what if I told you there's a way to not only handle that sting, but to rise above it entirely? That's where Stoicism's wisdom of detachment comes in. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality." What he's pointing to here is the power of shifting our focus away from external validation and toward our own internal compass. The Stoics teach us that our happiness and peace of mind shouldn't hinge on the opinions of others. Think about it: when you're constantly seeking approval, you're giving others control over your emotions. One harsh comment, one raised eyebrow, and suddenly you're questioning everything. But what if you could detach from that? What if, instead of letting others' judgments dictate how you feel, you focused on aligning with your own values and standards? That's where true resilience begins. Detachment doesn't mean indifference or apathy. It's about recognizing that you can't control how others perceive you, but you can control how you respond. It's about understanding that external opinions are just that, external. They don't define your worth unless you let them. So ask yourself, whose approval are you truly seeking? Is it the fleeting validation of others, or is it the quiet, steady confidence that comes from knowing you're living in alignment with your principles? This shift in mindset is liberating. It frees you from the exhausting cycle of trying to please everyone and allows you to focus on what truly matters: your growth, your integrity, and your ability to stay grounded no matter what others say. When you detach from outcomes and opinions, you build a kind of inner armor, a resilience that isn't easily shaken. And that's the kind of strength the Stoics believed in, not the absence of criticism, but the ability to rise above it. Criticism can feel like an attack, but what if we flipped the script and saw it as a chance to step into someone else's shoes? This is where the practice of empathy comes in, a powerful Stoic tool that transforms how we respond to criticism. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most renowned Stoic philosophers, often reminded himself to see the humanity in others, even when their words felt harsh. He wrote, "When someone does you wrong, ask yourself, what is their understanding of good and evil? Once you see that, you'll feel compassion instead of anger." This shift in perspective isn't just about being kind. It's about recognizing that criticism often comes from a place of struggle, misunderstanding, or even pain. Empathy doesn't mean agreeing with every critique or letting others walk all over you. It's about understanding where the other person is coming from. When someone criticizes you, they're often projecting their own fears, insecurities, or frustrations. Instead of reacting defensively, ask yourself a simple but profound question. What might this critic be struggling with? Maybe they're overwhelmed at work, dealing with personal challenges, or simply expressing their own unmet needs. By reframing their criticism as a reflection of their inner world, you take the sting out of their words and create space for connection rather than conflict. This approach has a dual benefit. First, it helps you stay grounded and resilient because you're no longer taking criticism personally. Second, it can disarm the critic. When you respond with understanding instead of anger, it often diffuses tension and opens the door to constructive dialogue. Think of it like this: empathy is the bridge that turns a potential argument into a conversation. It's not about winning or losing, it's about understanding and growth. So the next time you're faced with criticism, pause and consider the person behind the words. What might they be going through? What's driving their perspective? By practicing empathy, you not only strengthen your own resilience but also cultivate deeper, more meaningful relationships. And that's the kind of strength that truly lasts. Stoicism teaches us that endurance isn't just about surviving hardship, it's about thriving through it. Criticism, while often painful, is one of those hardships that can shape us if we let it. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." This idea reminds us that true strength comes from within, from our ability to withstand challenges without losing our composure or sense of self. Criticism, in this light, becomes less of an attack and more of a test, a chance to prove our resilience and refine our character. Think of it like this: when someone criticizes you, they're handing you a mirror. It's up to you whether you see it as a tool for self-improvement or a weapon of self-doubt. The Stoic approach encourages us to pause, reflect, and ask, what can I learn from this? Even if the criticism feels unfair or harsh, enduring it with grace builds inner strength. It's not about agreeing with every critique, but about using the experience to grow. Here's a practical way to apply this. The next time you face criticism, take a moment to remind yourself, this is an opportunity to grow stronger. Say it out loud if you need to. By reframing the situation, you shift from feeling victimized to feeling empowered. You're no longer just enduring the moment, you're using it to become more resilient, more grounded, and ultimately more free. That's the Stoic way, turning obstacles into stepping stones, one challenge at a time. Here's the next part of the script based on the provided outline segment. At the heart of Stoicism lies a profound truth. Your worth isn't measured by the applause of others, but by the integrity of your actions. This is where the Stoic focus on virtue comes into play. Virtue, in Stoic philosophy, is about living in alignment with principles like wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline. It's not about chasing approval or trying to please everyone around you. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, waste no more time arguing about what a good person should be. Be one. This simple yet powerful idea reminds us that the goal isn't to win over others. It's to live authentically, guided by what's right and true. When you shift your focus from external validation to internal virtue, something remarkable happens. You stop being swayed by criticism or flattery because your sense of self-worth is rooted in something unshakable, your commitment to living well. Criticism, no matter how harsh, loses its sting when you know you're acting in accordance with your highest values. It's not about being perfect, it's about being principled. This is how focusing on virtue builds resilience. It turns criticism into feedback, not a judgment of your character. So, here's a question to reflect on. Are you living in alignment with your highest values? Take a moment to consider whether your actions reflect what you truly believe in, or if you've been letting the opinions of others steer your decisions. This isn't about grand gestures, it's about the small, everyday choices that define who you are. When you prioritize virtue, you create a life that's not only resilient but deeply fulfilling. And that, more than anything, is a life worth living. One of the most powerful yet underrated tools in the Stoic toolkit is journaling. Think of it as a mirror for your mind, a space where you can reflect, process, and gain clarity, especially when criticism comes your way. The Stoics, like Seneca, were firm believers in the power of reflection. In fact, Seneca practiced nightly journaling, a habit he called his evening review. Each night, he would sit down and ask himself questions like, what did I learn today, where did I falter, and how can I do better tomorrow? This wasn't just about accountability, it was about creating emotional distance from the events of the day, including any criticism he might have received. When we're criticized, our initial reaction is often emotional anger, defensiveness, or even self-doubt. But writing about that criticism forces us to slow down and examine it objectively. It's like stepping back from a painting to see the whole picture rather than just a single brushstroke. By putting your thoughts on paper, you're able to separate yourself from the heat of the moment and ask, is there truth in this feedback? What can I learn from it, and how can I grow? Journaling transforms criticism from a personal attack into a learning opportunity. Here's a practical exercise to try. The next time you receive criticism, take a few minutes to write about it. Start by describing the situation and the feedback you received. Then ask yourself, what emotions did this bring up for me? Did I react defensively, or was I able to listen openly? Finally, reflect on what you can take away from the experience. Maybe the criticism highlights an area where you can improve, or maybe it reveals a misunderstanding that can be clarified. Either way, the act of writing helps you process the experience with intention and insight. This practice isn't just about venting or replaying the event in your mind. It's about finding the lessons hidden within the criticism. As Seneca wrote, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. By journaling, you bring those imagined fears and frustrations into the light where they lose their power over you. So grab a notebook and let your pen do the thinking. You might be surprised at how much clarity and resilience you can build, one journal entry at a time. One of the most transformative practices in Stoicism is the art of acceptance, acknowledging what is beyond our control and finding peace in that understanding. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, famously said, make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. This simple yet profound idea invites us to stop fighting against the inevitable and instead focus on how we respond to it. When it comes to criticism, this principle is especially powerful. Criticism, after all, is often outside our control. People will judge, comment, and critique whether we like it or not. But here's the shift in perspective. Instead of resisting or internalizing it, what if we simply accepted it as a natural part of life? Imagine criticism as rain. It falls whether you want it to or not. You can't stop the rain, but you can choose whether to let it ruin your day or simply put up an umbrella and keep moving. When we accept criticism as inevitable, we strip it of its emotional weight. It no longer feels like a personal attack, but rather an external event, like the weather, neutral and indifferent. Ask yourself, what would it feel like to accept this criticism without resistance? To let it pass through you without clinging to it. This doesn't mean you ignore it or pretend it doesn't exist. It means you see it for what it is, someone else's perspective, and decide whether it holds value for you. This practice of acceptance doesn't just reduce the sting of criticism, it also frees up mental and emotional energy. Instead of wasting time defending yourself or dwelling on hurt feelings, you can channel that energy into growth, learning, or simply moving forward. Acceptance isn't about giving up, it's about reclaiming your power to choose how you respond. And in that choice lies a profound kind of resilience. One of the most underappreciated aspects of building resilience against criticism lies in the people we choose to surround ourselves with. Stoicism, at its core, isn't just about individual strength, it's about recognizing the power of community. Marcus Aurelius, one of Stoicism's most celebrated practitioners, often reflected on the importance of choosing companions wisely. He believed that the company we keep profoundly shapes our thoughts, actions, and even our ability to handle adversity. Think about it. When you're surrounded by people who uplift and encourage you, criticism feels less like a personal attack and more like an opportunity for growth. This isn't just philosophical advice, it's practical wisdom. A supportive community acts as a buffer, softening the blow of harsh words and helping us see criticism through a more balanced lens. When you're part of a group that values constructive feedback over destructive judgment, you're less likely to internalize negativity. Instead, you're empowered to take what's useful and discard what's not. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that the people we spend time with are like the soil we plant ourselves in. Choosing the right environment ensures we grow strong and resilient. So, let's pause for a moment and reflect. Who in your life uplifts and supports you? Who challenges you to be better without tearing you down? These are the individuals who can help you cultivate the kind of resilience Stoicism teaches. Surrounding yourself with like-minded, supportive people doesn't mean avoiding criticism altogether. It means creating a foundation of trust and encouragement that allows you to face criticism with confidence. The Stoics didn't advocate for isolation or self-reliance in a vacuum. They understood that even the strongest among us need a network of allies. When criticism comes your way, it's easier to stand firm when you know you're not standing alone. This is the role of community in building resilience. It's not just about enduring criticism, but thriving in spite of it, supported by those who believe in your growth. One of the most transformative Stoic practices is the habit of daily reflection, a moment to pause, look inward, and evaluate the day's events. Imagine ending your day not with mindless scrolling or exhaustion, but with a quiet, intentional review of what unfolded. This practice, championed by Seneca, was his way of ensuring that each day brought growth, no matter how small. He would ask himself, what did I do well today? Where did I fall short? How did I respond to the challenges, including criticism, that came my way? This nightly ritual wasn't about self-judgment, it was about self-awareness and improvement. Criticism, in particular, can sting in the moment, but when we revisit it later, we often see it in a new light. Maybe it was harsh, but there's a kernel of truth in it. Maybe it was unfair, but it revealed something about how others perceive us. Daily reflection gives us the space to process these moments without the heat of emotion clouding our judgment. It's like stepping back from a painting to see the whole picture instead of just the brushstrokes. Here's a practical way to start. At the end of each day, take just 5 minutes to reflect on one piece of criticism you received. Ask yourself, how did I react? Was my response aligned with my values? Could I have handled it differently? This isn't about dwelling on the negative, it's about learning and growing. Over time, this simple habit can help you build resilience, refine your responses, and even uncover patterns in how you handle feedback. It's not about being perfect, it's about becoming better, one reflection at a time. As we wrap up, let's take a moment to reflect on the 18 Stoic techniques we've explored together. Each one, from practicing detachment to focusing on what's within your control, serves as a tool to help you build resilience against criticism. Together, they form a powerful framework, one that not only shields you from the sting of judgment but also strengthens your inner core. Think of them as stepping stones, guiding you toward a mindset that's unshakable, no matter what life throws your way. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." These words remind us that true resilience comes from within. It's not about silencing the critics or avoiding judgment. It's about cultivating an unbreakable sense of self, rooted in clarity and purpose. When you apply these Stoic practices, you're not just reacting to criticism, you're transforming it into an opportunity for growth. Now it's your turn. Which of these techniques will you try first? Will you start by reframing criticism as feedback, or will you focus on detaching your self-worth from others' opinions? Maybe you'll choose to embrace the practice of self-reflection, using each critique as a mirror to better understand yourself. Whatever you decide, remember that resilience isn't built overnight, it's a journey, one step at a time. So take that first step, experiment with these techniques, and see how they can reshape the way you respond to criticism. And don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's continue this conversation and support each other on the path to greater resilience. Together, we can turn criticism into a source of strength, just as the Stoics envisioned.